Imagine stumbling upon the remains of a tiny, human-like creature deep inside a remote cave. A skeleton, no taller than a kindergartner, yet clearly an adult. This isn't the plot of a fantasy novel, it's a real discovery that shook the scientific world in 2003. In a limestone cave on the Indonesian island of Flores, archaeologists unearthed a skull and partial skeleton of a hominin, unlike anything seen before. It stood just 3.5 feet tall, with a brain the size of a grapefruit. Its arms were long, its feet disproportionately large, and its bones suggested a life spent walking upright. It wasn't a child, and it certainly wasn't a modern human suffering from a growth disorder. It was something different, something ancient. Scientists named it Homo floresiensis, but to the world it quickly became known as the Hobbit, after the famous small folk from J.R.R. Tolkien's books. And for good reason. If these creatures had once roamed the earth, what else could history have hidden from us? Dating of the remains placed them at around 60,000 to 100,000 years old. But that wasn't all. Stone tools, fire pits, and butchered animal bones were also found, proving that these tiny people were skilled hunters. They weren't some weak, primitive species scraping by on whatever they could find. They had intelligence, coordination, and survival instincts strong enough to last for thousands of years. But here's the part that really puzzled scientists. Flores is an isolated island. The only way Homo floresiensis could have arrived there was by crossing the ocean. That means at some point in their history these tiny humans, or their ancestors, must have built boats. Let that sink in for a moment. A species with a brain barely larger than a chimpanzee's, yet capable of making tools, controlling fire, and possibly even sailing across open water. This challenged everything we thought we knew about human evolution. For decades, the general belief was that only modern humans, Homo sapiens, had the ability to navigate seas and settle remote islands. But the discovery of Homo floresiensis shattered that idea. Could there have been an entire lost branch of the human family tree, one that had its own technology, its own way of life, and perhaps even its own stories passed down through generations? And here's the strangest part. The people of Flores already had stories of small, hairy creatures living in the jungle. The Ebu Gogo, as the locals call them, were said to be mischievous, intelligent, and eerily similar to the real-life fossils uncovered in the cave. Could these ancient legends have been whispers from the past, a distant memory of a time when tiny humans still walked among us? Or did Homo floresiensis survive longer than we think? Some experts believe they went extinct tens of thousands of years ago, but others aren't so sure. Because if these little people were capable of crafting tools and crossing oceans, what else were they capable of? Life for Homo floresiensis was nothing like the world we know today. Picture an island dominated by dense forests, towering volcanoes, and creatures that seem almost mythical. This was their home. A place where the rules of evolution worked in strange and unexpected ways. Flores was a land of giants and dwarfs. Massive, now extinct storks over 6 feet tall stalked the forests. Miniature elephants, called stegodon, roamed in herds, while giant lizards, not unlike Komodo dragons, ruled the jungle floor. And in the midst of this strange ecosystem, these tiny humans thrived. Despite their small size, Homo floresiensis were skilled hunters. They crafted simple but effective stone tools, including sharp-edged flakes and small spears, which they likely used to take down prey much larger than themselves. Imagine a 3-foot-tall hunter working together with others to trap and kill a dwarf elephant 10 times its size. It almost seems impossible, but the cut marks on stegodon bones prove that they did exactly that. Fire was another key part of their survival. Evidence suggests they used it to cook food, scare off predators, and possibly even as a social tool. In a world filled with dangers, fire meant control. It allowed these small humans to stand their ground against the island's largest predators. But perhaps the strangest thing about them was how they got there in the first place. Flores was never connected to the mainland, meaning Homo floresiensis had to cross the sea somehow. Were they accidental castaways drifting on natural rafts of vegetation? Or did they, against all odds, have the knowledge to build simple boats? The idea of such small-brained humans setting out across the open ocean is hard to believe, but the fact remains they made it to Flores, and they survived there for thousands of years. And then, at some point, they vanished. How does an entire species disappear? Homo floresiensis lived on Flores for tens of thousands of years, adapting to its unique environment, overcoming predators, and mastering survival. But then, suddenly, they were gone. One theory points to a disaster buried deep in the island's past. Around 50,000 years ago, a massive volcanic eruption rocked Flores, covering the land in ash and wiping out many species. Could the hobbits have been among the casualties? It's possible. Volcanic eruptions have reshaped human history before, and this one could have been the event that sealed their fate. But there's another theory, one that's even more unsettling. Around the same time that Homo floresiensis disappeared, something else arrived on Flores' modern humans. It's a familiar pattern in history. When Homo sapiens moved into new lands, other hominin species tended to vanish. Neanderthals in Europe, Denisovans in Asia, and possibly even the mysterious Red Deer Cave people in China, all disappeared after encountering modern humans. Could the same thing have happened on Flores? If so, the question is, what exactly went down? Were these tiny people hunted? Did they lose a battle for resources? Or did they somehow merge with the newcomers, their DNA living on in ways we haven't yet detected? And here's where things get even stranger. The local people of Flores have long spoken of the Ebu Gogo, small, hairy human-like creatures who were said to steal food, speak in their own strange language, and survive deep in the jungle. According to legend, they existed until just a few hundred years ago, when they were finally wiped out. It sounds like folklore, but what if there's some truth to it? Could a few surviving Homo floresiensis have clung to existence, avoiding contact with humans for thousands of years, only to be driven into extinction more recently? Or what if they never disappeared at all? Some claim that sightings of small, human-like beings still occur in the most remote parts of Flores. If that's true, then maybe, just maybe, the story of the hobbits isn't over yet. The discovery of Homo floresiensis raised an unsettling question. Were they truly one of a kind, or were other tiny human species hiding in the fossil record? As it turns out, Flores might not have been the only place where small-statured hominins once walked the earth. In China, remains of the so-called Red Deer Cave people were found, dating back 14,000 years, shockingly recent in evolutionary terms. These individuals had unusual skull shapes, different from both modern humans and known ancient species. Some researchers believe they could be a late surviving branch of an unknown hominin, one that might have coexisted with early humans far longer than we once thought. Then there's the question of dwarfed Neanderthals. Could some populations of Neanderthals or Denisovans isolated in remote environments have evolved into smaller forms much like Homo floresiensis? There is no solid proof yet, but the idea isn't far-fetched. Evolution often forces species to adapt in unpredictable ways. What makes these discoveries so important is that they challenge the old idea that human evolution followed a simple, straight line. Instead, it's becoming clear that different human-like species existed side by side for much of history, some towering over others, some vanishing without a trace. But how do we know these remains belong to entirely separate species? Could they have simply been small humans with rare genetic conditions? That's where the debate takes an even stranger turn. Not everyone was convinced that Homo floresiensis represented a unique branch of humanity. Some scientists argued that the skeletons found in Flores weren't from an unknown species at all, but rather from humans suffering from microcephaly, a condition that causes an abnormally small brain and skull. This theory sparked a heated debate. At first glance, it seemed possible. The small brain size of Homo floresiensis, just about one-third the size of a modern human's, was far outside the usual range. But when researchers examined the skull more closely, they found key differences. The shape of the brain case, the proportions of the face, and the structure of the teeth didn't match those of any known disorder. Then there were the bones. The arms, legs, and feet of Homo floresiensis had features unlike any modern human, whether healthy or affected by a condition. Their proportions were closer to much older human ancestors, suggesting that they weren't simply small humans, they were something completely different. This debate highlights just how little we still understand about human history. The existence of Homo floresiensis forces us to question not just who they were but how many other unknown branches of humanity may still be waiting to be found. And if tiny humans once lived alongside our ancestors, it's only natural to wonder, did they also leave behind their stories? Long before scientists uncovered the bones of Homo floresiensis, stories about tiny human-like beings had already been passed down for generations. Across different cultures and continents, myths describe small, elusive people who lived in forests, mountains, and hidden places, always on the edge of human society, sometimes as helpers, sometimes as tricksters, and sometimes as something much more mysterious. In Flores, Indonesia, the Ebu Gogo were feared as mischievous little creatures that stole food and whispered in their own language. Local legend says they were small, covered in hair, and lived deep in the jungle, traits eerily similar to the fossils found in Liangbua Cave. Thousands of miles away in Hawaii, stories of the Menehune tell of a secretive race of tiny builders, said to have constructed stone temples and aqueducts long before Polynesians arrived. These legends describe them as small but incredibly strong, capable of carrying massive stones no human could lift alone. In South America, indigenous groups speak of the duendes, small forest dwellers who supposedly interact with humans, sometimes helping them, sometimes playing tricks. Their descriptions are strikingly similar to other legends of little people around the world. Are these just myths, pure imagination, or do they hint at something more? Could these stories be fragmented memories of real encounters with tiny humans that once walked among us? If so, when exactly did they disappear? Or did they? The fossils of Homo floresiensis are at least 50,000 years old, but that doesn't necessarily mean they disappeared back then. What if a few survived, living deep in the forest, avoiding contact with modern humans? Could ancient legends be based on real meetings with the last of these tiny people? Take the Ebu Gogo, for example. According to stories from Flores, these creatures weren't ancient beings of the distant past, they were still around just a few hundred years ago. Locals claim they scavenged from villages, stole food, and even attempted to kidnap children. The legend says that eventually the humans had enough. They lured the Ebu Gogo into a cave with gifts of food, and then set it on fire, wiping them out forever. Science is supposed to explain the world around us, but sometimes it only deepens the mystery. In 2003, in Chile's Atacama Desert, a tiny skeleton was discovered. So small, so bizarre that some believed it couldn't possibly be human. The remains, just 6 inches long, had an elongated skull, unusually hardened bones, and only 10 ribs instead of the normal 12. It looked like something out of a sci-fi movie, prompting theories that it was proof of extraterrestrial life. Had something crashed in the desert centuries ago? Had a non-human species walked among us in the past? In 2018, scientists sequenced its DNA and concluded that the so-called Atacama humanoid was human, a fetus with multiple rare genetic mutations that caused extreme skeletal abnormalities. Case closed, right? Not exactly. Some researchers found inconsistencies in the results. How could a fetus have bones developed as if it were a 6-year-old child? Why had no other human ever been found with such a combination of anomalies? And why were locals convinced that sightings of small, fast-moving creatures had been reported near the discovery site? If history has taught us anything, it's that science doesn't always have the final answer. The Atacama humanoid may not be an alien, but was it really just an ordinary human? Or could it be linked to other tiny, unexplained humanoids found in other parts of the world? Because Chile is not the only place where a strange miniature figure has surfaced. In 1996, in the Russian town of Kishtim, an elderly woman named Tamara Prosverina claimed to have found a tiny, frail creature in the woods. It was about 10 inches tall, with dark eyes, wrinkled skin, and a slightly elongated head. She took it home, fed it candy and milk, and even spoke to it, saying it made soft, chirping sounds in response. A few weeks later, Prosverina was taken to a psychiatric hospital, and the creature, nicknamed Alyoshenka, was left alone. When locals found its body, its appearance shocked them. It wasn't a deformed baby, nor was it any known animal. Authorities confiscated the remains, and that's when things got even stranger. Alyoshenka's body mysteriously disappeared. Reports claim that forensic specialists initially examined it, but before proper testing could be done, the remains were lost, or, as some believe, taken. Russian UFO researchers were convinced it was not human at all, while skeptics argued it was simply a malformed fetus. But without the body, there was no way to prove either theory. Adding to the mystery, local legends in the Kishtim region spoke of small humanoid beings living in remote areas, avoiding human contact. Could Alyoshenka have been the last of something unknown? a rare case of an undiscovered species wiped out before science could even study it? In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, whispers of small, strange skeletons emerged from excavation sites across North America. Reports from amateur archaeologists and even newspaper articles described unusually small human bones, some allegedly found inside ancient burial mounds. The Smithsonian Institution was said to have collected many of these remains, only for them to vanish without a trace. Could these skeletons have been dismissed as anomalies, or was something more deliberate at play? Some researchers believe the existence of multiple small-statured human species would completely rewrite human history, forcing us to reconsider our place in the evolutionary chain. A discovery like that would challenge academic authority, religious beliefs, and entire fields of study. If evidence threatened to change everything we thought we knew, would it be buried? The same pattern appears across the world. From lost skulls in South America to missing reports about pygmy-like tribes in Africa, there are countless cases where strange findings simply disappeared. Could these be isolated cases of mishandling and misidentification, or is someone making sure we never get the full picture? Because every now and then something surfaces that can't be ignored, something so shocking that it forces even the most skeptical to wonder, what else is out there? Most people assume that if a species exists, we would already know about it. But the truth is, much of our planet remains unexplored. The Amazon rainforest alone stretches over 2.7 million square miles, and deep within its uncharted territory, some believe something is still hiding. Recently, an expedition team working deep in the Amazon stumbled upon something that defied explanation. A lost tribe, unlike any ever recorded. People so small that they made Homo floresiensis look tall in comparison. Some describe them as barely 2 feet tall, with elongated limbs, large eyes, and an eerie silence about them. The team managed to capture photographs before retreating, claiming that the tribe disappeared into the jungle without a trace, moving in complete synchronization. The images, leaked online briefly before being taken down, sent the scientific community into chaos. Experts argued whether these could be modern-day humans with an extreme genetic mutation, an uncontacted tribe, or something else entirely. Others dismissed it as a hoax. But one thing was clear. There was no official statement, no follow-up, no further evidence. And that in itself was strange. Why was this discovery not being investigated further? Could this tribe be the last remnants of a completely unknown branch of human evolution? If Homo floresiensis survived longer than we thought, is it really so impossible that an even smaller species is still clinging to existence in the most remote corners of the world? Or did they simply decide, just as they have for thousands of years, that they don't want to be found? If an undiscovered species of tiny humans still roam the world today, why wouldn't we see them? The answer is simple: maybe they don't want to be found. Throughout history, smaller, weaker populations have been wiped out or absorbed by stronger, more dominant groups. If a lost human species survived into modern times, its best strategy wouldn't be to fight, it would be to disappear. Look at uncontacted tribes that still exist today. Many live deep in jungles, avoiding all modern civilization, despite planes, satellites, and relentless exploration. They've mastered the art of vanishing, passing through the trees without a sound, leaving almost no trace behind. If modern humans can do that, why not Homo floresiensis or something even stranger? Then there's the matter of intelligence. Just because Homo floresiensis had a smaller brain doesn't mean they were unintelligent. Their survival for thousands of years, their ability to hunt, build tools, and possibly navigate the sea, suggests they were far more advanced than we once believed. What if they learned over time that staying hidden was the key to survival? And if they are still out there watching from the shadows, it raises an even bigger question: what else have we missed? What other creatures, legends, and mysteries of our past are actually real, just waiting to be rediscovered? Science tells us that Homo floresiensis vanished 50,000 years ago. Legends say otherwise. And recent discoveries, skeletal remains, strange sightings, and even leaked photographs suggest that history may not be as settled as we think. The problem is, science moves slowly, while folklore spreads fast. Every time someone claims to have seen a small humanoid figure in the depths of a jungle, every time an unusual skull turns up in an excavation, the debate reignites. Skeptics say it's misidentification, hoaxes, or simple exaggeration. But what if it's not? Consider how many times science has dismissed something as myth, only to be proven wrong. The gorilla was once considered a legend. And as I've already told you today, the coelacanth, a fish thought to have gone extinct with the dinosaurs, was discovered alive in 1938. Even entire civilizations like the lost city of Troy were long dismissed as fiction before archaeology proved them real. The deeper we look into these stories, the more they seem to follow the same patterns: small, intelligent, human-like creatures, always on the fringes of civilization, always vanishing before they can be fully studied. Maybe that's a coincidence. Or maybe, just maybe, it's evidence of something we're not yet ready to understand. If Homo floresiensis could have survived far longer than scientists originally believed, what else is out there, slipping through the cracks of history? Are we truly alone in our dominance of this planet? Or have we simply been ignoring the signs, stories, fossils, sightings, all pointing to something we were never supposed to find? So after everything we've uncovered, the real question isn't just about Homo floresiensis. It's about history itself. Have we really mapped out the full story of human evolution? Personally, I doubt it now. And you? That's about it. How tall are you? Write in the comments. For more useful information, watch other videos.